Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Well played. I love it when an entitled a-hole parks in front of a fire hydrant and then suffers the effects of firemen doing their job. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. You need to leave my car alone. You say so. This is not my story, but my friend Adam's. Adam is a retired police officer, and this takes place in the mid-90s, back when Adam was a beat cop, maybe a year or two into his service. At the time this story takes place, a firebug had targeted several businesses over the course of a 3-month period. The fires were put out, but they were getting bigger and bigger, causing thousands of dollars in damage. Everyone was on edge, and the police were patrolling the area every night to try and catch Mr. Firebug. On this particular night, in the middle of February, Adam and his partner Rick drew the short stick and thus were assigned to patrol part of the area. While on patrol, he notices a classic Mercedes-Benz pulling up to a house and a familiar lady dressed in a thick fur coat steps out. He groans. It's the wife of a local business owner that every officer in town has had the displeasure to ticket for various parking/traffic violations. It would have been fine if she were a nice lady or something, but no. Her 3 default sentences were, "Don't you know who I am? Where's your manager/supervisor? And I'll have your job." Seriously, she was a Karen before Karens were even a thing? Rick points out to Adam that Karen had parked right by a fire hydrant, par for the course. Adam gets ready and steps out of the squad car. "Good evening, Mrs. Entitled, ma'am," Adam said. "What are you doing here?" Karen bellowed. Adam guessed that's the Karen version of the word hello. "Working the beat." "You do know you parked next to a fire hydrant?" "So," Karen said, "I'm suggesting you move it before I write you a ticket." "I'm not in the mood for extra paperwork tonight." "Listen, you need to leave my car alone or I'll have your job." With that, Karen storms off to the house, goes inside, and slams the door. Adam thought, "You say so," and proceeded to check the outside of the car for any more violations, and wishing that being a bee was a federal offense. As he's putting the ticket under the windshield wiper, the call everyone's been dreading comes on the radio. A fire alarm has been triggered. The address right across the street. Adam looks over at the building and can see a faint orange glow in the windows on the second floor. He reports the glow. He and Rick get ready in case Mr. Firebug decides to cross their path. Several officers arrive and set a perimeter around the building as the glow gets brighter and brighter. Unfortunately, by the time the fire department gets there, flashover happens and all the windows on the second floor get blown out. It was so hot that Adam felt sweat form on his face. The fire department needs to get the hoses set up, but Karen's car's in the way. Using safety hammers, they break the windows and run the hoses through, getting everything set up in record time. During all of the chaos, Karen comes out and she sounds like a banshee that swallowed an air raid siren. She runs over and tries unhooking the hose from the hydrant. "What are you doing? My car is ruined." It took 2 officers to restrain her and bark at her to go inside and let everyone do their jobs. She actually listened and returned inside. Adam spent the rest of his shift helping with the fire and investigation. It was close to dawn when he returned to the station to finish up. All he wanted was to go home and crawl into bed. That's when his supervisor calls Rick and him over and reports that Karen reported several $1,000s worth of damage. Not only had her windows broken, but water had gotten in and froze because it was again the middle of February. The supervisor asked them what happened and they reported everything. Fortunately, the dash cam caught a recording of the event. The supervisor shook her head, laughed, and said, "Well, you had nothing to do with the car getting damaged, so I consider this closed." A few weeks later, they caught the firebug, a different business owner who was trying to commit insurance fraud. He figured that if several other buildings caught fire, nobody would think he was responsible for burning down his own business. Unfortunately, Karen never did seem to learn her lesson, so she was racing back to racking up tickets and being a thorn in the police's side. She did have to pay for the damages and the ticket Adam gave her. Karens have always been a thing. We just didn't have a name for them. And our second story. Just fix the truck. On my first enlistment in the Army, I was a mechanic. In our unit, we had 3 staff sergeants for some reason. Sergeant T was on the last year of his contract and would be retiring. He was assigned as the motor supply sergeant, a position that was made up so he could ride the pine since we were overstaffed. Sergeant G was assigned as the maintenance supervisor and oversaw the preventative maintenance and repair of the vehicles in the motor pool. Every Monday, the vehicle operators would come to the motor pool to perform their weekly vehicle inspections. The mechanics would effect any repairs that were possible at the time, like changing out burnt bulbs, stuff that was easy and could get the vehicle rolling. Then we would begin performing repairs to any vehicle that had a deadline deficiency, a deficiency that needs to be repaired before the vehicle can be operated. These don't necessarily mean the vehicle isn't operational, just that operating the vehicle in that condition can cause greater problems. Then we'd fix the rest. Usually on Friday, we'd order any parts that we needed to repair what was left. After the operators left on Monday, the inspection sheets were divvied up between the mechanics and we got to work. One week I had a fairly easy workload and got all of my sheets finished by Wednesday. There was only one vehicle that had a deadline deficiency left, and the rest were ordering parts. The vehicle in question had been taken by the operators every day. I called the unit to let them know that the vehicle had a deadline deficiency and needed to return to the motor pool. They were short on vehicles and long on work and had been stalling, so I informed my squad leader and left it at that. I went to the office and began ordering parts. When my work was completed, I would assist other mechanics with theirs. Sergeant G walks in and asks why I was in the office, and I informed him that the rest of my work was complete and I was ordering parts. He asked to see my inspection sheets and started looking through them. I tried to explain about the one vehicle, but he cut me off and said he'd see what the paper said. He saw the deadline deficiency and ordered me out to repair that vehicle immediately. I tried to object and explain the situation, but he cut me off again and ordered me to go out and fix the vehicle. I tried a third time to explain. Again, he cuts me off and says, "I don't want your effing excuses. I want your butt out on the line fixing that effing truck. If I see you doing anything else before it's fixed, it'll be in Article 15. And Article 15 is non-judicial punishment and can result in reduction of rank or forfeiture of pay. Roger, Sarge, I'm on it. I walked to the rack of manuals for the vehicles, pulled the appropriate one, and found the size of bolts on the part that needed changed, grabbed my wrenches, and head out to the assigned spot for the vehicle. I laid down right there, raised my tools, and began making wrenching motions with my arms. I did this for over an hour, with some breaks, of course. Those were some giant wrenches. I saw people looking up at me and pointing. Eventually, someone went to Sergeant T and told him what I was doing, and he comes over to check it out. He watches me wrenching for a minute or two, head cocked. "What are you doing, OP?" "Fixing this truck, Sergeant. It's got a deadline." He was looking at me real funny now, like I had heat stroke or something. "OP, you do realize that the truck ain't here, right?" "Sarge, I know this, and you know this, but Sergeant G doesn't want to hear my effing excuses. He wants my butt out on the line fixing this effing truck." Sergeant T told me to get up and get back to work. I told him that G had threatened in Article 15. He said he'd take care of it. I took a smoke break to give them time to resolve the issue before I went back to the office. Not sure what Sergeant T said, but G had a scowl on his face when I came back to order my parts. And our last story. Someone steals my electricity. My electric bill skyrocketed a few months ago, and I didn't think much of it because I'm on a payment plan due to some debt I accumulated. I missed a payment and assumed the increase was a penalty. But this month I got a shutoff notice because of extremely high costs. When I realized the bill was for current usage and not past due amounts, I was astonished. I've been home less than ever, and I'm very careful about turning everything off. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment that's part of a very old home, a triplex. I have the bottom quarter of the house, my upstairs neighbor have the top quarter, and my next-door neighbors have half the house. We each have our own breakers and meters. For the first time ever, I really looked into the details of my bill, examining the kilowatt-hour usage data and comparing it to previous years, going back to 2018. In 2018 and 2019, my average usage was around 600 kilowatt hours per month, often less and rarely more. I have oil heat and use LED lights. I noticed that in 2020, my average usage doubled. which coincides with my landlord restoring the upstairs apartment and new neighbors moving in. My last bill showed I used 1,911 kilowatt hours from July to August, a huge jump. I hadn't realized how high this was until I compared it to my historical usage. Nothing had changed on my end. If anything, my usage should be lower since I'm rarely home. Around the same time, my landlord installed a 35-gallon electric water heater, supposedly connected to his electric supply, and did some wiring work. From my research, the water heater shouldn't cause such a high increase in usage, even if it were on my panel. Plus, I had 2 window AC units over the summer, but they were only running when I was home, and often only one at a time. I removed them a month ago because they smelled musty. I'd used the same AC units much more frequently in previous years when my kilowatt-hour usage was much lower. I talked to my neighbors about their electric bill. My upstairs neighbor with 4 people in the same size space didn't know his bill, but my neighbors in the larger half of the house showed me their bill. It was $200 less than mine, though I couldn't see their usage data. We're friends, and I know their lifestyle involves significantly more electricity use than mine, in more than double the space. My upstairs neighbor, who's quite handy, looked into the wiring but couldn't find anything wrong. We shut off breakers for the landlord's common utilities and garage, and my own breaker, and they seemed to turn off the correct things. But my suspicions remain. I checked the smart meters and noticed one of the tamper tags was cut. When I shut off my breaker, my neighbor's young son came outside and asked what was going on because his computer upstairs had turned off. Clearly, some of their usage is being charged to me, presumably due to the wiring work done in 2020. I gathered all my evidence and contacted an attorney specializing in tenant rights and utilities. They advised me to document everything and file a formal complaint with the electric company. The electric company sent a technician to inspect the meters and wiring. They confirmed that my meter was indeed wired to my neighbor's apartment in some areas, causing my high usage. I took my landlord to small claims court. The court ruled in my favor, ordering the landlord to reimburse me for the overcharges and cover the cost of rewiring my apartment correctly. The electric company also waived the extra charges once they saw the mix-up was not my fault. My bill was returned to normal, and I received a refund for the months of overbilling. The landlord was fined and warned to ensure proper wiring for all his properties. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.